name is Duke Oishi, and I'm proud to be hosting the first episode of High Energy Hawaii with ThinkTech Hawaii. And I have Jeff Mikulina with me here. Thanks very much for coming.
Thanks, Duke. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
It's you. So, I understand that you're the executive director of Blue Planet Foundation.
That's
Can
right.
you tell me a little bit about what you do on a daily basis? And
Sure. Well, I'll just give you a flavor of Blue Planet. Blue Planet's a relatively new nonprofit organization in Hawaii, founded by Mr. Hank Rogers. And his vision is to end the use of carbon fuel on Earth, or fossil fuels on Earth, starting with Hawaii, making Hawaii kind of a role model for clean energy solutions.
Okay.
So we've been at it for a couple of years and really looking at what levers can we pull within the Hawaii business community, within our islands to really make the change, the transformative change we need to make to get off fossil fuel. So we're active at the legislature. We're trying to build the clean energy movement, like any social movement, and then we're trying to implement some programs to show folks how it can be done.
Sure. What are some examples of some of those programs?
Some people might have seen the Hawaii Home Energy Makeover Show last year, which was about an hour TV special that showed how to basically use easy things to cut people's energy use at home. So we picked a home in Nanakuli and we cut their bill in half. We picked a home in Kalihi and made it a pretty much a zero energy home with LED lights and a photovoltaic system.
Oh, wow.
So we wanted to make it really accessible to people and go through the steps and say, hey, here's what you put in, here's the savings that you can get with these simple steps and really deliver it in an easy to digest format.
Sure.
So things like that. Our other kind of big program right now is we're doing like a CFL Bulb Blitz, both on Molokai and on Oahu, and the other islands as well. It's the simplest, easiest, quickest way to reduce oil use is changing general purpose lighting at home, and then taking the next steps, appliances, solar hot water heating and the like. But we wanted to start with bulbs so we could reach a lot of people and kind of deliver that efficiency message and talk about Hawaii's clean energy future while we're saving them money at home. So we've screwed in about 50,000 light bulbs to date. We'll probably
Does that
double
equate to about in energy savings?
Energy savings, if you're looking at the life of the bulb, about 10,000 hours per bulb, it's probably about 40,000 barrels of oil over the life of the bulb. It should be about 10 or 12 years. And these are pretty high quality bulbs. We found a really good manufacturer. So it's something, it's tangible, and we can actually move the needle in a way on oil usage while we're hopefully building the movement and getting more people to think about energy.
Sure. And so you were saying earlier that this is Hank's vision. Can you tell me a little bit about how this came about, or?
Sure. Hank, if folks have met him in the community, he's a pretty big thinker. He really leaves a wake of creativity when he comes through. He was responsible for bringing Tetris to the world, and he has a number of software.
Good man.
Yeah. So those who are addicted to that game, we thank you. He has a number of other software ventures that he's working on, but a few years back he kind of had a reorientation and what's important in life, and saw this as kind of a key issue for our future. Dating back to his days in the 70s, diving up at Laie Point and thinking now of ocean acidification and what's happening because we're dumping so much carbon into the atmosphere. It's having a direct impact on our reefs, on our oceans, and the only way to prevent that is to stop dumping stuff into the atmosphere. And here, Hawaii, we're just blessed with these resources.
Sure.
We've been talking about this for a generation. Surely there's a way to make it happen. So he sees the foundation as one of the catalysts to making that transition.
Great. Well, you talked about pumping carbon into the air, but I kind of wanted to segue into something that's been in the news for the last month, and the big the BP oil spill in the Gulf.
Into the ocean.
Yeah.
We're skipping the middleman with that. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? And
it just underscores the urgent need to move away from these resources. I mean, we've spent the last century developing quite nicely by pulling resources out of the Earth's crust, combusting them, and putting the byproducts in the atmosphere for all of us to deal with. And every step of that process, is either it's pulling oil out of the ground or if it's pulling coal out of the ground. It's messy. It's prone to disasters like this. We saw a number of disasters this year, from a tanker spill in Australia on the Great Barrier Reef to the mining disaster earlier this year. Now this. It just underscores the need to quickly move away from these. And you don't hear about a wind spill or a solar spill. I mean, these are the young energy that we're looking to tap into, like solar, wind, biomass. isn't prone to this sort of thing. And we have the technology to make use of this energy, and we're getting smarter at how we do it. But we need to get away from these handcuffs of the past of using fossil-based energy and move to our clean energy resources. The good news in Hawaii is we don't have offshore oil. We won't for probably 200 to 300 million years, and by then we'll be underwater. So just by the nature of the island. And we're kind of blessed in that way. So what do we have? What are our strengths in Hawaii? Well, we have ample trade winds. We are blessed with solar resource at 22 degrees latitude. So let's tap into those things.
Okay. I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Good. One down.
I'm a very, very strong supporter and believer of renewable energy, but I understand that the resources like wind and solar, because of their variability and intermittent nature, it's, at least with the technology that we have now, is it really possible to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels completely? Because I know that we need to have sort of the base load generators to keep our electricity reliable.
Yeah, and that's the crux of the issue, and that's what makes it so exciting from a technology standpoint. If this was just plug and play, we would have done it already. So the challenges of Hawaii and really why Hawaii can offer solutions to the world and not just deploy these resources and be done with it, but actually become a learning center is, as we add more wind to the grid, it does affect reliability. Same with solar. They're intermittent sources. So how do we do it? How do we put large amounts, 70, 80% on the grid, and make it work? Make sure the lights still come on and have the reliability that people expect.
Sure. So that's a real concern.
It is a concern, and the technology is evolving quickly. One of the things is just a smart grid, so we can control not only the supply but also the load. So you can imagine, neighborhoods, networks, circuits where they can sense on a microsecond scale, okay, the wind's dying down. We need to control the load instead of controlling the supply. Shut off a bunch of compressors and refrigerators, or do other things behind the scenes with the communications technology we have, with the control technology, and make it work. The other side is supply, and supply is evolving in a number of ways. One, storage for vehicles, electric EV, and that's where a lot of the cool research is happening, because their constraints aren't only cycling of power, but also the weight and stuff like that, and cost. But if potentially, if we have enough electric vehicles on the grid that are plugged in, you have a de facto network of storage that people are purchasing.
So the idea is, during the day the sun will generate the power, and at night you plug in your vehicle, and
or maybe
during the day
wind,
change. Okay.
So some exciting places where the storage technology is evolving, and that will be a key part of our total solution for electricity in Hawaii. But you're right, and that's the crux of the matter right now is how do we deal with these intermittent resources? But it's an exciting technology problem to have, and if anything, Hawaii has a long history of innovating and inventing its way out of through adversity, and this is one of these situations. But the reliability that we're more concerned with is reliability of every supertanker arriving once every 2 weeks, and that steady supply of cheap oil. And we just can't base our economy on that anymore.
All right, thank you. So I know Blue Planet's very active at the legislature. Can you tell me about some of the, measures that you folks are advocating this session, and what passed, what didn't, and
the
what your
session
successes and failures were?
They just wrapped up. Kind of two main bills that are of interest. One success story, one not so success story. The success story was, we need to fund our clean energy future. We really have to make a down payment on the things that we need. So can we tap the source of our problem, which is imported oil, and use those revenues to fund our clean energy solutions? So we have been working with others on a barrel fee. We like to call it more of a carbon tax, but it does just apply to oil. And seeing if, can we move something where we develop a big pot of money to do things like efficiency in a larger way, or maybe some of the smart grid investments or improvements, or maybe some of these other important planning and integration projects that need to take place. We did some market research and found that people really support this concept. Everyone loves clean energy, and then when you ask them to put their money where their mouth is, most Hawaii residents support paying up front if it means weaning Hawaii from oil.
Sure.
So we found upwards of 70% of Hawaii residents were willing to spend $3 extra per month. I'm sorry, $5 extra per month on their energy bill if that went to weaning Hawaii from oil. That was about a $3 per barrel tax.
Wow.
So we're trying to develop support for that at the legislature. What ended up happening is a $1 per barrel tax passed.
Okay, so that was a compromise position.
It was a compromise, but the big compromise was there's a big puka in the budget this year, and they're looking for any revenue stream, and this was an attractive one. Because again, $1 in the price of $60 to $70 oil is pretty manini. It's kind of in the noise of how it fluctuates. So 60% of that dollar is going to the general fund, at least this year. We hope next year to go in there and tweak it and get more of that money going to clean energy, which is what we think residents support. And then maybe making even a more significant tax so we can move that. And, we're reluctant to say tax because people have this visceral reaction to tax.
Sure.
But surcharge, gratuity, whatever you want to call it, clean energy investment is what it is. And the idea is to wean Hawaii off of oil, stabilize the price of energy while we're creating jobs, while we're reducing impact on the environment. And eventually this tax will go to zero as we wean ourselves from oil and implement the solutions that we need to here in Hawaii. So that was one of the, I think, more success stories.
What were some of the challenges you faced this session?
Aside from passing a tax? Well, it's that. I mean, people are very reluctant to, touch these issues in an election year. And I think the biggest challenge was trying to give comfort that this money will be spent wisely, and we could do more work in again developing the whole policy so it really accomplishes what it's set out to accomplish, which is the planning, the integration, the investment in clean energy.
Right.
So we hope to work on more of that next year. But the other one, which was really unfortunate that it didn't pass this year, was an innovative policy called Property Assessed Clean Energy, which was kind of born of a plan in Berkeley a couple years back and implemented by a number of cities and now a couple of states. It was ranked one of Harvard's top 10 innovations of 2010. And the idea is, how do you get rid of that upfront cost of solar that prevents so many people from investing?
Sure, I'd love to have a system on my
But you
house
don't want to
well,
drop 20 grand. Or
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you're in good company because a lot of folks in this economy, or even when things are good, and similar. I mean, imagine with your cell phone. What if you instead of paying a monthly bill, you just paid a few grand or tens of thousands of dollars up front for the next 20 years.
Right.
So this kind of reverses that and makes it more like your electricity bill today. Let's just install solar using some bonds that the government floats, and then you pay that off through your property tax. So it goes with the property. If someone moves, then it stays with the property because that's where the benefits are. So it's been working fairly well elsewhere in getting over some of these classic impediments to doing solar and doing efficiency. We had a up to $50 million special purpose revenue bond for this purpose, and it was a combination of it's a new idea, so there's a lot of risk aversion to new ideas.
But it made it pretty far, didn't it?
It did. Yeah. It did. We still need to do some homework and getting support of particularly the counties because they'll be tasked with implementing this. And then giving some comfort to the banking community too. There were some concerns raised there. Not insurmountable concerns. I mean, things that were addressed on the mainland.
What were some of the concerns that the banks raised?
Well, the idea behind this was the loan, in essence, that would be paid off through the property tax was going to be senior to a mortgage.
Okay.
So there was some concern that, should there be a default, then
sure, who steps in first, right? Yeah.
Right, and bankers like to make sure that they get paid first.
Everyone wants to get paid first.
Yeah, but as we see, this is something that's going to reduce their cost of living, and that was one of the conditions for a homeowner to use these resources is they have to show that their cash flow is going to be positive from the first month, so
Sure.
they're actually going to be in a better situation than they were last month. So when it comes to paying off their bills or their mortgage, they're in a better position because obviously they have more discretionary income. But it went so far as to say, well, since the property tax is going to be every 6 months or every year, and they're saving so much money every month, maybe they're going to go out and blow it on a plasma TV and then not have the money come.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's just some comfort building. We have to show some more case studies in other places how successful it's been.
Okay.
But the idea of how do we overcome this first cost, because we have some 300,000 homes in Hawaii that need solar on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
How do we bring this to the masses? And this is, really kind of the middle class chunk that's not, running out to buy photovoltaic or hot water. And this is just a really innovative way to do it.
Sure.
If not this, then something that's been discussed quite a bit in Hawaii, but hasn't been implemented is on-bill financing. So if the utility would simply offer, a financing package that you could pay off through your electricity bill, that's actually closer to the source for a homeowner. One bill, they don't have to go out and find a loan from the bank. It's just, a package that's provided by the utility.
Has that concept been broached to
It
the
has.
utility? And
they did a pilot program. They said there wasn't much subscription. I think there is. That's something that you have to educate folks on.
Right.
But again, the idea being, how do you overcome that upfront cost and just make it a service that people are paying for, just like they're paying for electricity. And that kind of gets to some of the fundamental challenges we have with energy. Imagine if you build a house and before you can plug in your electricity, you have to pay for a power plant.
Right.
Forget it. So it's basically you have this monthly bill that you're paying.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can make clean energy more like that monthly bill sort of approach.
Streamline and make it easier, right?
Yeah, we get more adoption.
Oh, well,
Next year on that bill.
Okay,
Next year.
okay.
Yeah, we have some homework to do, but next session.
what other things are Blue Planet doing right now to promote its mission?
A number of things. We're trying to tackle this problem from a number of approaches. But one of them is just kind of one of the most powerful forces we think in the universe, and we think in Hawaii in particular, is kind of social pressure. As people see how folks around them are behaving, they tend to emulate that behavior and change their ways to match, to conform. So can we make smart energy choices and energy efficiency and clean energy kind of normalized in Hawaii in a way where when people see something that doesn't make sense, it doesn't sit well with them. So one of the ways we're employing this is a new tool called the Hawaii Energy Tracker. This has been done on the mainland, but we're trying to make it a really Hawaii-specific product. It's an online application where anyone in the state can look at their energy bill for the past 12 months, 18 months online. So first there's that feature, so they can just kind of track over time, which isn't that novel. But what makes it cool is they can choose to share this data or aggregate with others. So all of a sudden you can see how you stack up with people in your neighborhood. So in 96822, here's where I am, here's the average. In fact, here's the average of folks with 4 people under the roof. And you can start making comparisons where, am I above, am I below? So we think that will have a forcing effect. They've seen on the mainland.
Will that sync up with like Facebook or Twitter, that kind of
work out? That'll be phase 2.
Yeah,
the widgets and things. Maybe an iPhone app. But the third part, and this is what we think will be really fun, is competitions. So once everyone's kind of subscribed to this and tracking and comparing, what if we set up a Iolani versus Punahou or something? 6 month, who can reduce their aggregate bills the greatest percentage? And we think just getting some of that healthy competition in there will drive people to conserve more, to find ways to reduce their bill. And remember, saving money, too.
Sure.
So this will be a free online service, Hawaii Energy Tracker. We hope it'll be up by the end of summer, at least in a beta form, and then rolled out to everyone. So that's one of the ways, just kind of getting people familiar with seeing how they stack up with others, and then doing some competitions and getting people to think about energy.
In a fun way, right?
Hopefully in a fun way, yeah.
It's kind of like the reverse idea of when you see everyone driving Hummers on the street, then you want to get a Hummer, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's one way of trying to put this to work. And we're looking at other ways too. We have something called the Solar Portal that should be up actually in a few weeks, where people can see through Google Earth which rooftops around them have solar, and then which contractors they used and how much they paid for it and when they installed it. And so the same idea of seeing all the Hummers on the streets. If you see a bunch of Priuses or a bunch of bikes, you might start paying attention to bikes. Here, the idea is, and this will match up great with PACE or a financing system. If people see in their neighborhood, wow, all of my neighbors pretty much have installed solar. They all use this contractor, and they all ranked it pretty high. what excuse do I have left?
Right.
So just trying to show that kind of normalization, like, hey, this is what people are doing.
So we're kind of on the brink for PV or photovoltaic systems as we probably were for solar hot water systems.
Right, but we still have a
before.
long way to go with hot water.
Okay.
But 1 in 4 homes having hot water, so we have a lot of work to do there, and that's the real low-hanging fruit. And this isn't exactly rocket science. I mean, this is what the Romans figured out, some time back. So, but just getting people familiar and thinking about energy, making it a top-of-mind issue, and bring it into their lives. Because right now we just totally take this for granted. You turn the lights on, it's like oxygen, it's there. So trying to bring it to people in another way and normalizing smart energy choices.
Okay. Well, it sounds like fascinating stuff and a bunch of
We hope so.
awesome things coming online soon, and lots of moving parts, right?
Yeah. And and we're open to ideas. We have no monopoly on ideas here, and it's just, how do we do this? I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. We found this 1977 Senate report that outlined energy independence for Hawaii by the year 2010. Here, this much geothermal, this much wind, this much solar. And since then, we've been using more oil. We've been using less clean energy by percentage. So what's it going to take? What's going to be different this time? We're very encouraged with some of the steps that the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative has taken, some of those agreements. I think certainly the signal it's sent to the globe that we're open for business for clean energy. But we have a long way to go to bring people along and to get some comfort and see the possibility of what Hawaii could look like.
So would you say that's sort of the biggest challenge to you, to educate the normal person?
Yeah, and we're talking about, we got a flavor of it when oil went up to $150 a barrel in August of 2008. That could become the norm really quick. But it's something that as soon as it settles back down to where it is today, people kind of stop thinking about it. You fill up, you kind of lament what you're paying, but it doesn't really fundamentally motivate behavior change.
Right.
So how do we kind of be the ghost of Christmas future and say, hey, this is coming? But look, the alternative is pretty attractive, and this is about job creation. It's also about building a community that is, democratizing power. You can have power on your rooftop. You can save money at home. You can contribute to Hawaii's energy solutions, while you're keeping people employed. And it's a lot more attractive than shipping billions and billions to foreign countries to buy oil. And we think a lot more centered around island values, too, in terms of, how we can employ our resources.
Wow. There are obviously various ways to generate renewable energy. There's, the big ones right now are wind and solar. There's also the notion of having distributed solar systems versus having sort of a centralized a PV facility. What are your thoughts on the difference between having maybe central PV versus distributed generation? Are there pros and cons?
Yeah, there certainly are.
Yeah.
And it's been, we kind of went into this being very technology agnostic, saying, we want everything we can as fast as we can. When you start breaking it down and looking at technology that's available today, commercialized technology, and economics, kind of some quick solutions sort out pretty rapidly. And really the larger scale stuff is what's most economic today. The large wind, the utility scale PV or concentrating solar. But I think this is changing pretty quick, and with new technology, with storage, it's changing quick. But there's more than just economics. There's also the grid resiliency and strength, and getting people involved in the energy solutions. And rooftop photovoltaic is very attractive. And we could see a day. It's already happening. There are homes that have battery backup with a rooftop PV, and the lights go off, and they, or whatever, something happens, and the power goes off, and they can keep their lights on. So there are benefits to that, and I think there's some attractive attributes for people saying, hey, I want to be self-sufficient on my own. It does become a technological challenge, though, when you have all these rooftops with PV or some other energy source tapping into the same grid, as opposed to just plunking down a wire from a single source. So that's why the economics are so different today.
Right.
Sometimes it's 4 or 5 times as much. But again, we need it all as quickly as possible.
Okay, so that's really the end goal or mission of Blue Planet, to just get off of fossil fuel and get there as quickly as possible.
I mean, we keep an eye on it. Obviously, we're not going to, rape and pillage and do whatever. I mean, we want to make sure this is in harmony with island values.
Right.
And of course, having community input and buy-in and making the solutions make sense for folks, and that they benefit just as much as those users.
So just hypothetically, if Central Station PV could get built faster, just because the odds of financing and economies of scale, would that be something that you'd push for more than distributed generation rooftop PV for now?
I think we'd be pushing for both, and again, the technology is changing pretty rapidly where folks want to do that. That's great. But the bottom line is, I think that, the package, people doing rooftop photovoltaic in combination with storage, there's a learning curve associated with that, and the cost is dropping fast enough that it's starting to nip at the heels of regular grid power from central station sources. So I think the utility, they ought to be keeping that, they ought to be looking over their shoulder and seeing this catching up, and recognizing we need to do something quick to stabilize our power sources. They've done good on the regulatory side and looking at how do we stabilize our rate base in an era of declining electricity sales. But this technology is sneaking up, and you could hit a tipping point just like other technologies, say cell phones, versus landlines, or PCs and the like, where people say, do I want to plug into the utility and pay more and be dirty, or do I want to be clean and save money? So we don't want to pick winners. We want to just it's great. It's great to see so much technology change and stuff happening.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, we'll see. There also happens to be a lot of rooftops out there that are, pointing towards the sun. So that makes it a little bit easier than buying, 8 square miles of land in Eva to do a large concentrating solar facility. But if folks want to do that, if Castle and Cooke wants to do that up in Mililani, that's great. We need everything we can. The Kahuku wind project. We're keeping an eye on what's happening on the neighbor islands for support for those large wind projects. And then plus biomass, and that's another big piece of the puzzle, we think, in Hawaii, particularly for transportation fuels. And that's where, as we develop biofuel sources, liquid fuels ought to go in things that move, like ships or like cars or
jets,
airplanes if possible. Yeah. Electricity should be really developed from wind, solar, maybe wave. But then there's some synergies too. For a good, facility that maybe produces some food, maybe some fiber, and then biomass that can be used for, combustion, and then biofuels too. And there's some groups looking at how to have these really synergistic operations to make them, get the most energy per acre out of the land.
For biofuels, there's obviously a ton of them, right? Different technologies, and do you see one sort of emerging as?
I don't know. Everyone talks about algae as being this, panacea, and that would be great. But there are certainly other, crops that Hawaii has some experience in growing. But we'll see, and that's what's great about the market, kind of shaking out the inefficiencies. Although we introduced some inefficiencies with ethanol support, but.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's sort of a policy tension between choosing something that's pro-environment and getting off of energy. For example, you raise these large-scale solar projects on land out in Eva or in Mililani, which typically are on large tracts of agricultural land, right? So, what are your thoughts on that? Do we prioritize agricultural self-sufficiency, or
and those are some of the tensions that might emerge. Fortunately, so far, things that have been proposed have been on lesser quality ag lands. And in fact, even the wind facility, like on Lanai, probably not going to be growing much there at all. It's pretty windy. So far, no huge things have emerged. We'll see, but definitely with biofuel and food, that's something where obviously you want the same sorts of attributes: good soil, access to water, large chunks of land. So we'll see how those things sort out. But really, food ought to be prioritized. That's kind of something that's really central. Whereas there are other alternatives for energy.
Sure.
So we'll see how those things go. But it's good that we're looking at self-sufficiency holistically and thinking about all the different pieces that need to happen to make sure Hawaii is secure.
All right. Well, looks like our time is up. So
All right. Thanks, dude.
thank you very much for
Yeah, I
coming
appreciate it.
down. I appreciate it.
Yeah.